the opening words of the preamble of the United States Constitution. They signify that the power of the U.S. government rests with us, with we the people. The government exists to serve us and not the other way around. Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Frederick, your host for Voices of We the People. Thank you so much for joining us. And today we have a very, very special guest and conversation. You know, sometimes this time of year, people are distressed, and yet all the joyfulness that goes on around them only makes things worse. And so it's time for comfort to go along with the joy. It's time for us to reflect and to help our neighbors who are in distress, who are lonely, who have experienced loss. And Reverend Dr. Broome is the best person to help us struggle and figure out how we can do a better job of coping and how we can help our neighbors in our communities help as well. Dr. Broome has been with us before as a guest. She is a teacher, a pastor. She is a consultant, but more importantly, for today's conversation, she is a spiritual pastor. And that part is what we tap in today. Dr. Broome, thank you so, so much for being a part of this conversation, of leading this conversation.
Thank you for having me so much um, in this moment and in this time speaking about this. So I truly appreciate the invitation.
My pleasure. My pleasure. How would you like to start? What would you like us to know first about your ministry and how you help people? Sometimes this is called Blue Christmas.
Mm, mm.
And so how as a pastor who's ministering to a congregation, to your residents in your neighborhoods, to our communities, how would you help us start to think about this?
I think a Blue Christmas this year, especially dealing in this political climate, it's not only about grief or loss, but a lot of people are dealing with moral fatigue. People are not just sad, they are worn down, the injustices that they feel, the gaslighting by power, scared, fearful about what's happening to their neighbors and their community. So the church's task is not to fix the sadness. We're so easy, it's very easy for us to try to fix it, try to make people feel happy, but we have to tell the truth about why it exists and how God meets his people inside of a Blue Christmas. So we have to name that grief honestly without rushing people to hope. We're very quick to get to the manger scene, but we never understand the stress, the anxiety, um, the fear of Mary and Joseph. We're very easy to get the North Star and have everybody singing the beautiful songs, and that's fine, that's wonderful. Not even discrediting that or diminishing that, but we have to create a space where people can say why this season hurts them. A fear of having a health scare that will bankrupt my family. Fear of not being able to even be safe enough to walk the streets because of the hue of my skin. Safety for our children, safety for our elders, the future. We have normalized, we can't normalize political despair as a spiritual response to a moral injury. So we have to avoid that it'll be okay language. And if we look at scripture, I think Psalms 13, 1 and 2 says, "Oh, how long, O Lord, will you forget me forever?" And then Lamentations 3, 19 and 20, that thought of my affliction is bitter. My soul continuously thinks of it. So here it is. We have scripture to even support having moments of despair. And so we can't very quickly skip past lamenting into celebration. Lamenting is not a lack of faith in any of us. It is a faith that refuses denial. Even Israel praised its depression out loud. Silence, we have to understand, is never the biblical response to harm. But what church leaders and what we have often want to protect people from despair instead of accompanying them through it. That can feel like abandonment, but it's not. We have to be able to tell the truth about it. So I think that's a beginning. We have to name that grief. We have to name it honestly for what it is.
I have
I don't know if that was an answer or
no, no,
what.
that was great. I have a friend. Well, we moved from New Jersey, and that's where she is. But she hated Christmas, and as you can tell with my earrings on, I'm the ultimate Christmas person. I love Christmas. And so when she was telling me that she hated Christmas, I couldn't understand this. Why in the world did she hate Christmas? It turns out she hated Christmas because the entire year, she and her husband spent saving their money so that they could buy these amazing Christmas gifts for their families, most of their families, sometimes friends, but mostly families. And they spent all of their money on these gifts that they had been neglecting themselves, sacrificing themselves, and giving these like cruises. I mean, who gets cruise for a gift? But they,
Wow.
they were giving these really substantial gifts. And she hated Christmas because the rest of the year they sacrificed to be
Mm,
able to give these gifts. And sometimes family members said, "Is this all you're giving me?"
wow.
Yeah, so they were, and I would not think that she's the only person like that who really does not like Christmas, and there's a good reason for it.
Mm, mm. So, what you were saying, helping people understand what they're feeling, that's not a personal weakness. That's an emotional connection. We gotta understand when we see people feel that way, there is a root cause. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be upset around the holidays. And
Mhm.
holidays are so rushed and has become so commercialized. We consume so much in the month after Thanksgiving and before New Year's, millions of dollars within 30 to 40 days. So it has lost it has lost its emotional attachment or feeling. People feel ungrateful where it should have been a moment where family is. We have to begin to build memories and not expenses when it comes to the holiday season. Let's build memories. Let's take walks or, let's take a trip. I wouldn't even having a family trip to where we're not buying gifts. The trip and seeing each other is the gift. Let's
Yes.
begin to really put the meaning back into spending holidays with your family. It doesn't mean to blind you in your bank account, but it does mean to hold those memories dear.
Thank you for that thought, and she really could use it. The other thing I wanted to mention is the podcast that will follow this next week is done in memory of Cooper, Sean Cooper, who passed unexpectedly in July. He was 43. His wife is 36, and she is struggling. And one of the things that she did not want to do this year was spend time with family. She said she just needed to be alone. And I, I really talked to her. I mean, I try not to get involved in people's business too much, but it's. And what we talked about was, I said, would he want you to spend Christmas by yourself? Because she didn't want to spend it with the family. And she said, no, he wouldn't. She said, but I haven't had time to grieve. I needed time by myself. Eventually, she did go. She's in Georgia with her family now for Christmas. And I'm grateful that she has family that can help her grieve. Sometimes with loss, we just feel like we're alone. How can we help each other in those circumstances?
We got to give them permission to grieve without apology. Say, "Pun, you don't have to feel merry to belong here. You don't have to feel jolly to sit with your family. Do not ask them to be strong for the family. Let them opt out of traditions without guilt. You don't have to come for Christmas dinner. It's okay. Can I bring you Christmas dinner? Can I bring you just dinner?" So we wrap around the holiday season these these expectations and then guilt people when they don't fulfill them.
Hmm.
So that's harmful. That's harmful. When we say, and we have to be very careful with our words of comfort because in some ways it does harm. My sister passed unexpectedly a few years ago, right before the holiday season. And one of the things that somebody said was they wouldn't want you to be sad. And I thought, well, you really think that they want me to be happy? You know, how would we know that? And even so, I would always have to go back to, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. So even in my sadness, I know God is with me. Blessed are those that mourn. So we don't always have to push through our sadness to be a part of a family. We should have family to be able to say, you can grieve. There's not a timetable to grieving. There's not a time limit to it, and there's not a depth to it. What we have to do is sit beside them. Even in our silence, our presence speaks more than our words. And so we
Hmm.
have to be careful that Jesus does not just bless the resilient, he does bless the mourners as well. So grief is not this spiritual failure, it's not this downer for the family. It is a relational response to being loved and loving. So we have to allow people to grieve in their own comfort, in their own way, in their own manner. We got to remember with them and not for them. So we got to speak the name of that person that they lost, ask gentle questions. What do you miss the most? Sometimes finding something that reminds them of this beautiful life that they had doesn't bring them more despair, but sometimes lifts the despair because I can now, my tears has a smile to them. Yes, I remember the loss of their presence, but I do remember when they would burn pancakes for breakfast for me, or do some silly thing that makes me remember the joy, and that lifts my despair without pulling me down. It just reminds me of the beautiful soul that I had the blessings to share with. So avoiding that person's name, that might be harmful to them, making you feel like they've forgotten this loved one with them. Changing the subject, that's another way of avoidance for a person that's grieving. And treating grief like a phase that it would pass, that's another thing that we have to be very careful of our language when someone is grieving. Let them weep, let them cry. We might not want to see them cry, but they may need to cry. So it's okay to sit with somebody. I always had I always have a little motto, you can't cry by yourself. So if you're crying in front of me, I gotta cry with you because I will not allow you to cry by yourself. And that kind of helps people know that I'm walking with you. I may not know what it is to lose a spouse, but I know what loss feels like. And sometimes words sometimes do more harm than my presence. So we have to allow them to grieve and just be with them in their grieving moments.
The other part of that is, aside from just the grieving, it's what do you do next?
Yeah.
Uh, once you know that you still have to live in the real world. You still have to, and in her case, she had two kids. So you
Mhm.
still have to provide for Christmas for the kids, and you still have to work to make a living, and you still, so there's still things that people have to do in spite of the grief and in spite of the loneliness. And so I read this article recently about, some things you can do to help people who are grieving. And one of the things they said was when the family gathers, for example, for Christmas, light a candle for the in memory of the person that you've lost. So that's one way. But I also think about the loss being healthcare, for example. we're gonna have a lot of people who are gonna struggle. And the struggle has started now, and it's gonna continue. And they are our neighbors. They are our community. How would you help us to cope with that kind of a situation?
Mm. Tell the truth about the power. Help them understand, literally, help them understand what they're feeling. This is systemic pressure. Name the policy harm, the loss of health care without turning the place into, okay, they voted for and they voted against. It's not a partisan rally. When people are dealing with the loss of not only health care, but think about ACA premiums is getting ready to be hiked up to where people are going to
Yeah,
have to choose. Do I go to the doctor or do I pay my rent? That's literally the choices that they're going to have to make. And so we have to name it. We can't use phrases like these are the conditions we're living in, these are the structures that are built, decisions made for our lives. Eliminate all of that. You got to really understand the conditions that are made are by policy choices. Then those that are super saved, like the Lord's going to be here, the Lord has already given us instruction. He told us in Ecclesiastes, I saw all the oppressions that are down under the sand and on the side, under the sun and on the side of their oppressors, there was power. He's told us in Isaiah, woe to those who make unjust laws. So the Bible already assumes that politics affects us. Anybody who says politics does not affect your mental or your physical or your spiritual, there's a problem. The prophets never separated mental health from material conditions. So, what if people are not losing faith but refusing to lie to themselves anymore? We have to begin to ask that question. What do we do in the midst of this? Get people informed on what they can do. You can help contact your senators or state representatives and tell them to extend the ACA premiums. Put pressure on them while we're crying. Once we get through crying, once we get through lamenting, they went to war. That's scripture. So after I got through crying, after I got through lamenting about what I lost, now I got to go to war. And war does not mean fighting with weapons. We are not, the weapons that are warfare are not carnal in this age. They are truly spiritual. So get on that phone and begin calling. Get on the email and begin typing. Use your social media to bring these things out. They can repeal that budget. They can extend ACA subsidies, and nobody will be lost for anything. When you got 1% owning the almost the 99% worth of the wealth, there's a problem. It is not scarcity, it's greed. And so
yeah.
as we're dealing with this, as we're dealing with these things, call it out. Tell the truth. Do not spiritualize oppression. Do not say we're going to get through this. No, we are going to get through this, but we are going to use our power to get through this. You are the hero in the story. We are the ones that we are looking for to help change things. So that's what we tell people in the midst of not only whatever loss they're dealing with in a family structure, but now we have another level of political loss, of political power that is oppressing us, that we have to also hold account that it's mental fatigue, it's moral fatigue, it's political fatigue, but it's also now fuel for you to say, you know what, not another year will I go by and not say anything about the loss of my health care, the loss of my vote, the loss of my power, and the fear of my people, fear of my neighbors that is being that's being politicized. So yeah, we have that power to begin to say that.
The other thing that I'm concerned about in terms of our community is that we have some of our neighbors who are just being picked up off the street. Um, I like what's happening around the country where people are saying we're not going to tolerate you taking our neighbors and going places that we have no clue where you're going, why you're doing it. And so we're going to stand in the way so that you don't do that. And because we think North Carolina is not involved, let me tell you, we are involved. There are cities in North Carolina right now where people are being picked up off the street just because they happen to be in a certain place. It is our responsibility to our neighbors and to our communities to stand. I want to say in the breach, but to stand with them. And recently, I've been trying to put together this voting for them. And I discovered that there are people in our community who are afraid to even help plan because it's so fraught for them to come out and speak. So I just want to lift that up.
Yes. And so that's what we have to do. What we saw clergy, we saw churches, we saw neighbors, we saw teachers, we saw health workers, we saw them all stand up and say, you know what, not my community, not my neighbors, not my child. When you saw school teachers and principals and guidance counselors standing up saying that this child will get home safely. We saw neighbors delivering food because our neighbors are not going to starve because you're here terrorizing our neighborhoods. We saw churches open up and begin to have community meetings on how to train others to spot and how to record, how to report. That is what the beloved community should do. Everybody is our neighbor. We love reading the story of the Good Samaritan when he says, who is your neighbor? Everyone is your neighbor. Everyone. And nobody, no human being is illegal. No human being is illegal.
Thank you.
And so we have to, I love my clergy brothers and sisters. We were on the grounds. We were making sure we were training. We were opening doors up. We need more of that in every state, because everybody is connected in humanity. There is a spirit greater than us that connects us in this thing called humanity. Whether you call him the great creator, oh Holy One, the unknown, the everlasting, whatever name you call him, whatever name you call the spirit that's greater than us, that connects us, humanity, whether you call him God or Son or Allah, there is a connection. And so what happens to one of us happens to all of us. If you see a child being snatched up, that's your child. Every child I see is my grandchild. Every young brother or sister every young brother or sister that I see him, that's my child. That's my brother. That's my sister. That's my daughter. That's my son. That's my grandchild. And so once we begin to take on that responsibility that we're all connected in this thing called humanity, then yes, stand up. Is it being fearful? No, it's being bold enough to bring a light to the darkness. And that's what we've been called to do.
That's right. Can you talk about where we might find resources to help with training and how we cope, how we help our brothers and sisters cope so that they're not fearful of being snatched off the street? I know that there have been training centers or training in some of the churches. Can you talk specifically about some of the churches that might be involved or some of the organizations that might be involved?
I know SAMS is an organization that is involved with training and recording what is happening. I also know we have several North Carolina churches. I just got through one. Pullen Baptist Church, Pastor Nancy Petty is one who's amazing, does amazing work with our community. Repairs of the Breach also has helped with training. Poor People's Campaign is another one that has helped with training and identifying. There's Democracy North Carolina, which is another one. Our youth rally in Durham, young people. When I tell you those young people are on fire and really are standing and being actively engaged in their democracy, it's amazing. It's amazing. So there's several ones that I know of that I've just worked with, but there's plenty more. If you just go online and look for, I think it's ICE training. No, I'm telling you, it's ICE resistance training, and you can find the listing of it.
That's good to know. And one of the things we want to lift up is resources to help people cope for loss and loneliness, but also for how to improve our communities, because that's really what Voices of We the People is about. It's trying to connect people with their concerns, with ways that they can address the concerns, for people who can help them with individual issues. For example, in early January, we're going to have a session on the ACA and what the state of North Carolina is doing and what some of the organizations are doing to help with the loss of credits, ACA credits. But also, how do you call your congressperson? How do you write your congressperson consistently, not just one time? Because our representatives in North Carolina need our attention constantly.
Well, I know if you sign up, if you go to breachrepairs.org, we do have a way that you can sign up and begin to get a script for your what to call and what to say to your congressperson, your state senators. We also are hosting Moral Mondays every month in front of state senators' office with coffins showing the 51,000 deaths that are predicted to occur every year with all these budget cuts. There are so many organizations. I know Poor People's Campaign, the coordinated committees that you can join and be a part of that action as well. They have we have an app that actually call your state senators. So signing up, going to breachrepairs.org, signing up for the newsletter, signing up if you are clergy as part of the prophetic council, that gets you the newsletters, that gets you the actions that you're going to do. It also gets you onboarding and training on how to hold a Moral Monday in front of a state capitol with data. We're not just walking up there with emotions, but we're literally walking up there with data that is verified and validated. This is how many people are going to be dying under the budget cuts that they have put into law. This is how many people per city is going to be losing their right to vote under this black belt gerrymandered map that they have proposed as law. So joining Breach Repairs, going through the training, going through the onboarding helps you be prepared to contact your senator, walk to the General Assembly, stand in the galleys, and begin to voice your power. If they wasn't so afraid of our power, then they would not be trying to silence us.
And keep us
So
from voting.
exactly. So we got to use our power. We got to use our power.
Right. What we will try to do is, as much as we can, put some of those resources on our website
Okay.
so that we can have people go and understand what the resources are and what's near them so that they can participate because what you're talking about is so, so important. Um, 2026 is just going to be um, in my opinion, it's one of the years that would test our souls, and we have to get out and vote and demonstrate and do what we can to make sure that our voices are heard, recognized, and attended to. I think that Reverend Broome, if you have any final comments, uh, that would be great. I keep looking to see how long it's been. I can't, I didn't want to hold you longer than half an hour. So, I want to be true to that. But I want to also thank you for the inspiration that you give each time that you speak with us, and particularly today when we're dealing with loneliness, we're dealing with struggles, we're dealing with things that we don't necessarily have to deal with all the time. These are like new things for some of us. And
Mhm.
so I appreciate the strength of what you're saying, the inspiration that you bring, but also the resources that you talked about. And so I'm wondering if there's something final that you'd like to put forth and charge us to do or say or live. That's fine.
I have been studying the Christmas story, and I know we've heard it, and I like to go down rabbit holes. And I asked myself, why was the manger the safest place for a baby? Why the manger?
Great question.
Why the manger?
Yeah.
And so as I was researching it and trying to figure out, because we make it this beautiful place, we set up the nativity scene and it's all this, and we have really romanticized the birth of Jesus in this manger. And so I was studying it, and one of the things I came across is the manger. It wasn't a crib, it wasn't a cradle, it wasn't a barn prop, it was a feeding trough for animals. And here it is, this feeding trough, the lowest of places was the safest place in a time to birth a baby. We didn't deal with the maternal care, the aftercare of the mother. We're dealing with a colonized young woman giving birth without medical support, laboring in a space meant for animals. So there was not any cleanliness, not because of divine presence, but the human systems failed them. They were leaving from an oppressive census that they had to take. And so here it is. There's no room. They always say there's no room at the inn. No, there was no rooms in the houses. There was not an inn. There was not a hotel. We have romanticized the story so much. It is so far from the truth. And so there's a moral demand. The more and more, I'm not going to dig into all of my studies, but the manger was not a miracle God chose. It was a consequence of systems that made no room for undocumented parents. And whatever policies force people to survive without care, without access, or without protection, that means even today we're still building mangers instead of making room. So there's a moral demand of the manger in this season. The manger does not ask us to feel tender. It demands that we build differently. We build systems that care for everyone, whether they have a document that says that they're a U.S. citizen or that they're a living, breathing human being. We have to build different in systems that extend healthcare. It doesn't even need to have a time limit. We have the richest country. We should have universal healthcare that there's never a question
That's
on
right.
who is fit to receive access to quality healthcare. We have to build differently where educational systems are not resegregated after everything that we fought for. We have to build differently, that we're 5 to 6 generations in still fighting for the right to vote. So if I could leave with anything, it is let's build differently in 2026. Thank you for this time.
Amen to that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Our guest today has been Reverend Dr. Hannah Broome, and she has just brought us an inspirational message on several fronts, including the blue Christmas loneliness issue, but also what we can do, what we have to do at this point in our lives and preparing for 2026, that we, as my father used to say, gird our loins and get busy. Because life does not stand still and wait for us. We have to get out there and be busy.
Mhm.
And also she's given us some resources that I'll put on our website, Voices of We the People. It's actually www.voiceofwethepeople.com. That's our website. And I'll try to put those resources on as soon as I can. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Broome, for what you've done, and to say that Dr. Broome is part of Repairers of the Breach, and she's given us so much encouragement about what they're doing. Feel free to give her a call and she'll let you know how else you can be helpful to her. I'm Dr. Gloria Frederick, and I'm your host, and I want to thank you for joining us for Voices of We the People, and for Dr. Broome's inspiration to help us strengthen our community, to build a community that feels empowered. Um, I want to also thank our host, 810 Studios, for what they continue to do, and I'm putting information about them on our website too. They have a new app coming up, um, New Year's Eve, and it'll make it easier for us to contact them and to see what they have to offer. So I'm very appreciative of that. And as I said, next time our podcast will be dedicated to Sean, who passed very unexpectedly. But because he had such a wealth of information to share, that I'm hoping that he will be an inspiration to all of us. Thank you, Dr. Broome, and enjoy the holidays. I
Thank
hope
you.
to see you in the new year.
Same to you. God bless you all. Thank you so very much.